Chapter 5. Sandra walked around the apartment aimlessly. The past few weeks had been a nightmare come true. But now it was over. She had finally been released on probation for striking an officer, while Chink had been sent to juvenile until he became 18. Well, it wasn't too bad, she told herself, for the 1000th time. It could have been worse. They had tried to pin something on her, but it had been impossible because she had never made a sale nor ever handled any of the dope. So eventually they had had to let her go. That she worked every day went in her favor. But from the small taste of law she had seen, she didn't want any more of it. For a black person, to become involved with the law was trouble, spelled with large letters. It didn't make any difference if you were guilty or not. If you were black, that was good enough to find you guilty. Well, she decided, she wasn't in any bad shape. She had over $1,000 in cash money, plus there was over $1,000 worth of dope stashed around the apartment. The dope, she decided, would have to be left alone until she could figure out some way of moving it. It wouldn't be that much of a problem, though. If she could get in touch with the right drug addict, then the problem would solve itself. But common sense told her to take her time and use some kind of caution. It would work out better in the long run. Suddenly there was a knock on the door, taking Sandra out of her daydreams. She peeped out the window before opening the door. "Hi, George. Betty?" Sandra spoke politely as the couple came into the apartment. As she closed the door behind them, she wondered idly what could they possibly want. Ever since the day Chink had used them to purchase the apartment for them, she hadn't seen them, except for one other occasion when they had come by and tried to buy some dope from Chink. She remembered his anger. He had gone into a rage because they had come to his home on such an errand. If there was one thing he didn't do, that was sell dope from his home. And the only reason they knew where he really stayed was because he had had to use them to get the apartment. "Have a seat," Sandra offered as she waved her hand in the general direction of the couch. George was a tall, dark-complexioned addict with a scar on the side of his face, while his woman, Betty, was just the opposite of him. She was light-complexioned with a blonde wig. Where he was tall, she was short and stocky. Her mouth was large, while her eyes had a dazed look about them, as if she was tripping out on LSD or something. "We was wondering," George began, since Chink got busted, if we could cop from you." He raised his hand before she could interrupt. "I remember what Chink said about coming over here trying to cop, but since he is busted, I kind of thought that you might be handling the stuff yourself, maybe." He stared at her closely, his eyes never leaving Sandra's face. "Well, first of all," Sandra replied, "I ain't dealing no stuff." She hesitated slightly, then added, "But there is a few drugs left. I was thinking about getting in touch with you to see if you wanted to handle it for me. It ain't that much, really, and after you get rid of it, there won't be any more, 'cause I don't have Chink's Connect." She stopped suddenly, then corrected herself. "I mean, George, if by chance you would want to handle the little bit of stuff I got and help me get rid of it." She shrugged her shoulders and was so involved with what she was saying that she didn't notice the gleam that came into George's eyes at the mention of his handling some drugs. "How much stuff do you have?" he asked, not able to conceal the greed in his voice. A warning bell went off in Sandra's head. She studied him closely, then asked quickly, "Well, how much stuff did you come to buy?" She had a sudden inspiration and added, "You just might be purchasing all the stuff I got." She couldn't help but notice the way his shoulders dropped at her words, as if she had knocked out his main daydream. "Oh," he said dejectedly, "we didn't want to buy but a $25 spoon. He hesitated, then continued. I know that won't wipe out your supply. At least I hope it don't. No, I don't think that will wipe out my supply, Sandra replied, putting him at ease. You excuse me for a minute, she added, then walked off to the bedroom. She removed the dope from the toe of one of her shoes and counted out the balloons. It was a good thing that Chink had already mixed and measured out everything, she reasoned, as she counted out 9 $25 balloons. For a moment she wondered if she was doing the right thing. George and his woman were the only addicts that she really knew, so it didn't leave her too much of a choice. Oh well, she reasoned as she walked back into the living room. She didn't have that much to lose. If they didn't return with the money, the loss of the dope wasn't that much, as far as she was concerned. She still had 22 more balloons left, and the sooner she got rid of them, the better off she'd feel. Here, George, she said, handing him the dope. There's 8 $25 balloons there, plus the one you just bought. Sandra waited until George had counted out the bags of dope she had dropped in his hand. It's $200 worth of stuff there, George, but all I want for it is $125. You'll make $75 out of it, she added. Shit! He exclaimed loudly. It ain't really enough dope here for me to start dealing. By the time people get the wire that I've got some stuff, I'll be out of it. He lifted his eyes up and stared at her closely. You mean to tell me that this is all the dope you got? He asked harshly. For a brief second, Sandra was startled by the tone of voice he used. Then she pulled herself together. It ain't none of your business how much stuff I got, George. But if you don't think I've given you enough to handle, just give it back. Ain't nobody twisting your arm making you sell it. I told you from the start that I didn't have that much. Now, if you want to down it for me, cool. If you don't, that's cool too. Her voice hadn't risen, but there was a firmness in it that couldn't be ignored. From the way George tightened his fist with the dope in it, there was no doubt that he wanted the dope and had no intentions of giving it back. As Sandra examined him, she began to really doubt her actions. She knew at once that she had made a mistake giving the drugs to George. She tried to straighten it out. When I went up and saw Chink last weekend, he suggested that I offer you the chance of getting rid of the few bags that I got. He wants me to bring the money up and put it in his account, so you do what you want. I'm only carrying out his order. At the mention of Chink's name, George's face changed. There was little doubt about it. The man was afraid of Chink. How much time did you say Chink was doing? He asked suddenly. I didn't say, she replied quietly. But if you want to really know, I'll gladly tell you. He's got to stay in jail until he turns 18. His birthday is in February, so I believe he'll go to the parole board sometime this year. More than likely 6 months from now. She knew she lied, but from the facial expression George made, she deemed it well worthwhile. If George had any intention of putting shit on her for the money, he'd have second thoughts about the matter now. But to put your mind at ease, George, whenever you get rid of that dope I gave you, I still have enough to give you another bag. As the words Sandra spoke penetrated his scheming mind, George smiled. As long as he knew there would be some more dope waiting whenever he got rid of this small amount that she had given him, he could get his game together. He didn't have any intention of ever bringing her all her money. All he had to do was figure out a way to get the rest of the stuff from her. Since it ain't but a small amount of dope, Sandra, I don't see why you don't just give it all to me now. That way, I won't have to be rushing over here trying to catch up with you when I run out. If I had all the dope, you wouldn't have to worry about the police coming in on you and finding something either. For the first time since entering the apartment, Betty spoke up. Yes, indeed, Sandra. The best thing you could do would be to give all that shit to George. That way you won't have no worry. I'll bring you the money over as soon as George gets rid of the jive. In the silence that followed, you could hear the wind blowing outside. The tree branches could be heard as strong winds rocked them back and forth against the building. Sandra watched the scheming couple closely. She felt like she was being enclosed with two snakes. I would if I could, George, but you wouldn't want me to go against Chink's order, would you? Every time she mentioned Chink's name, there was a noticeable change in George. This time, sweat broke out on his forehead. He glanced at his woman, then asked, "Well, Sandra, since we'll be only doing business with you, Chink wouldn't even have to know, now would he?" He winked at her, as if they were plotting something together. "Oh, yes," Sandra answered quickly. "I don't never do nothing against what Chink has said. Right now, I'm wondering if I should tell him about this conversation when I go up to see him this weekend." There was no way for him to hide his fear now. His knees started to shake uncontrollably. "Don't do that, honey. I just mentioned it, that's all. We'll do it just like Chink wants, yeah, just the way he wants it done. I was just offering my opinion, that's all." 20 minutes later, Sandra was rid of them. She sighed with relief after they left. It had been a mistake to give them as much dope as she had, but it was too late to worry about it now, she reasoned. After taking a hot shower, Sandra went to bed and sleep came slowly. She tossed and turned most of the night until the early morning traffic could be heard. Then she suddenly fell asleep. She slept soundly until a loud knock awakened her. She sat up and rubbed her eyes. She didn't have the slightest idea of who it could be. After all, no one really knew she stayed there. She slipped a light green wrapper around her transparent nightgown and went to the door. She glanced out the window first, and the sight of George standing there only angered her. She snatched the door open and demanded sharply, "What the—" That was as far as she got. 2 other men pushed into the apartment. They had been concealed by staying close to the wall. The only way she could have seen them would have been to open the door and stick her head completely out of it. The taller of the pair waved a gun at her. "Just shut your mouth, sister, and you ain't got to worry about getting hurt." Sandra backed up until she felt the coffee table strike her in the back of the leg. Then she stopped and stared at the gunman. The tall one was dark-complexioned with a nervous twitch in his left eye. She kept staring at it, and it seemed to jump every minute. The other man, who only had a knife, was short and stocky, brown-skinned, and with a heavy black mustache. The men didn't pay any attention to George after pushing him into the apartment. Their complete attention was directed at her. The tall gunman advanced on her. "We don't want to give you no trouble, little sis, so just tell us where the dope and money is and you won't get hurt." "There ain't no money. We spent all the cash we had on lawyers," she managed to say before the pistol came down and struck her a vicious blow in the face. Pain exploded on the side of her head like she had never felt before. Then she could feel hands lifting her back up to her feet. For a moment, she wondered why she had fallen so easily. A male voice came through the fog that was trying to envelop her. "Now, little sis, we know you got the stuff somewhere in this joint, so just set it out." The voice brought her back to reality. They wanted the little bit of money she had put up. She opened her eyes and saw the tall man leering down in her face. "Where is it, girl? Don't try and be hard. Just set it out," he said, then slapped her across the face. She raised her hand and pointed at George. "I gave him the dope last night, and he ain't brought no money back yet." Both of the stick-up men laughed. "Yeah, that sure was some good dope you gave to old George there. But honey, don't you go expecting nothing back from that shit. You know George is a dope fiend, so he ain't gonna know how to handle no dope without shooting it all up." The shorter man said this in a heavy voice, then added, "Now, if you was to give me an old tree here a bag," he said, pointing at his partner, "you might just get some kind of money back for your trouble." Sandra knew the man was lying, but if she refused to give up the dope, there was no telling how far the men would go. She raised her hand and was surprised to feel blood running down the side of her face. "Even if I gave you the rest of the dope, you wouldn't bring back enough money to pay my rent here, let alone enough for us to try and cop some more stuff with," she replied, fighting for time, trying to think of a way out. The two men smiled at each other. "Don't you worry about it, little sis. Just give up the dope," the one called Tree said. For a minute she hesitated. If she didn't do what they asked, she reasoned, they would use force. Okay, she said. "Look in the closet, down in a red pair of shoes in the toe. It's all that's left," she added. Tree had already rushed off. He came back out of the bedroom, grinning, carrying the dope. "Now," he said as he approached her, "all you got to do is tell us where the money is. Then we'll leave you all alone." It seemed as if her world was falling down around her. She had tried, but it hadn't worked. Yet there was one thing she was determined to do, and that was hold on to the money at all costs. "There ain't no money," she stated. "If there had been, do you think I'd have taken a chance on giving him some dope?" She pointed at George, then added, "I must have needed money badly to take a chance like that." She noticed the men hesitate and glance at each other undecidedly. They had no way of knowing if she had any money or not, she reasoned. Tree moved suddenly. He stepped up and ripped her gown down around her waist. She opened her eyes and saw that she was half naked. "Damn, girl, you ain't got no tits. But you is kind of young. If you don't want to be gorged, you better come up with that money." Wait, she pleaded. "You ain't got to do nothing. If there was any money here, I'd have given it to you when I told you where the dope was." "God damn it, bitch," Tree cursed. "We don't want no story. We want the cash. Nothing else." He slapped her across the face, then added, "Either give it up or pay the consequences." Whatever they were going to do, she reasoned, they'd do whether she gave up the money or not. "I tell you," she cried out, "I gave you everything I had when I told you where the stuff was. Please, don't you understand? I just don't have anything. Wait, she added. "I might have $20 or so in my pocketbook, but that's all the money I have to live on until payday." "I believe her," Tree's partner said. "I don't think they have any bread, man." Tree shrugged his shoulders as he stared at her young body. "Fuck it!" he exclaimed, then reached down and ripped her nightgown completely off. He stared at her young ripe body. "I want some of this young pussy anyway." George managed to mutter something for the first time since they entered the place. Tree turned on him in anger. "Fuck you, punk! Bitch ain't gonna tell the police nothing. If she gets fucked, and that's it. What's she gonna say? We come in and robbed her of her dope, then fucked her?" "It's rape, man. It's rape," George finally stated loudly. "I didn't get into this shit for no pussy, man. Fuck that shit. I got all the cock I know how to handle at home." "Well, go home and fuck it then," Tree replied coldly. "Hey, Fred, cook up one of them bags of dope, man. If we gonna trim the young sister, we might as well make it good to her. Ain't no sense in us coming too soon," he said. And both the men burst out laughing. Fred slowly removed the outfit and cooker from his sock. He bit off the end of one of the balloons, but found another knot in the balloon. After biting that one off, he dumped part of the dope in the cooker. "Don't put too much of that stuff in the cooker. It's good dope that ain't been cut to death, Fred. Plus, man, we want to be able to get the old bone hard enough to please Miss Lady. Sandra stared around wildly. She knew now that the men intended to rape her. She opened her mouth to scream, but Tree caught her in time. He jammed his hand over her mouth, then removed a dirty hanky from his pocket and stuck it down her throat. "George," Tree said sharply, "get off your trembling ass and help us. Get in the bedroom and find me a sheet so that we can tie this bitch up. I believe she might just put up too much of a struggle. We don't want no noise, you know." "Man, I want to leave," George stated. "I didn't have any idea you was going to get pussy struck. Dope fiends, too." "Well, you ain't going nowhere," Tree answered shortly. "I ain't had no young pussy like this in quite a while," he added, as he reached down and rubbed her leg. Without thinking, Sandra kicked out and caught Tree in the chest. The blow had been so swift that it took him by complete surprise. He tumbled over on his back. Like a cat, she was on her feet and streaking for the door. She tried to snatch the hanky from her mouth so that she could scream as she frantically snatched at the door. She managed to get the lock off and jerk the door open, only to find that the night chain was still on. Before she could close the door and release the chain, Fred was on her. He struck her from behind. The blow was hard and cruel. As she fell against the door, he whirled her around and hit her with a short right to the jaw. She crumpled up like a rag doll on the floor in front of the door. When she awoke, her feet were tied with strips torn from her sheet. She stared at the two men with fear. They were both nodding from the effects of the dope. For a moment she hoped the dope had taken away their desire for sex. "Well, well, well. Looks like our little old fox has finally awoke. For a minute there, sweetie, I was afraid that Fred here had broken your jaw or something. Although that wouldn't have stopped the show. It might have stopped us from enjoying that mellow young head of yours, though." Tree said this as he came up out of his nod. He got up and crossed the floor, then knelt down beside Sandra. She turned away from him. Slowly she became aware of his hands, probing, feeling, caressing her body. She caught her breath as his fingers slipped up inside her. He pushed two of them in as deep as they would go. As she closed her eyes to blot out what was happening, she became aware of the fact that now there were 4 hands fumbling around all over her. Chills raced up and down her spine. Her nerves arched as fear traveled from the top of her head to the bottoms of her feet. It felt like her bones and her flesh were being ripped apart from each other. Her throat went dry and her stomach flipped over as they put their hands up inside of her. She tried to use her tongue to moisten parched lips, while she gulped until it looked like she was strangling. "You keep opening your mouth like that," Tree said, "and I'm gonna put something in it." She lifted her head in defiance as determination and anger overwhelmed her very being. Had they known her, the glare of absolute determination and hatred would have warned them that it wasn't over, and wouldn't be over until someone was dead. As she felt the first man's dick penetrate her, the fear that had almost petrified her fled. In its place was a cold, chilling hatred. "Go on, Fred. Put your bone in her mouth while I ride this cock," Tree said, breathing hard as sweat poured down off him onto her young body. The smell of the man almost overcame her as she glanced away from the sneering, slobbering man. His spit was dripping out of the corners of his mouth, and as the drops fell on Sandra, she twisted her head away and tried to scream. Fred glanced down into her eyes and shook his head. "No bet to me, baby. I'll never give this bitch the chance to bite half of my dick off, man." "Don't worry about it, man," Tree replied. "If the bitch tries to bite, I'll break her goddamn neck," he said seriously. "Yeah, man, I know you will, but that ain't gonna do my pole no good. The bitch would probably die with it like a bulldog dedicated to the end. Nah, thank you, Tree. You put your dick in her mouth and let me do the choking if she bites. Tree didn't answer as he continued to plunge up and down. Man, this bitch is laying like a piece of wood, he finally said, then added, Nah, Fred, I ain't gonna take the chance either. Plus, the bitch ain't gonna suck it right no way. But I got a better idea. He removed his dick and rolled her over on her stomach. We just bust this cherry back here. I'll bet the bitch don't lay like no log then. Pain exploded in her anus. It felt like her very bowels were on fire. She tried to scream, but the hanky only made her gag. She swung her head from side to side wildly. Sandra prayed to die, in her agony. It seemed as if the pain would go on and on, but she bit down on her lips and put up with it. Her tears only excited the two men more. They made animal sounds as they argued over the woman. Tree reached around her and picked her up by her small waist. He pulled her to him roughly as he slobbered on her neck, mouthing words of endearment. Oh, baby, I know it's good to you, he repeated over and over again, until she passed out from the pain.